Welcome to another installment of Breakfast with the Fat Man. I got my breakfast, got my morning jello, got me a bag of whatever over here, thing of milk sitting on the floor, cat staring at it. It is what it is. Charisma. What the heck is charisma? How do you define charisma? I've seen some conversations not too long ago on the RPG Brigade channel, as well as tabletop board game or tabletop whatever heck it is, and some people got into some debates on on this uh, attribute of charisma. It it confuses a lot of people. I think, and most of us have a different view or take on we each have a unique opinion on what something is, and that's to be expected. That's understandable. But defined by what's in the game material, and it varies from game system to game system because sometimes they don't call it the same thing. I noticed that there's traditionally a fixed amount of attributes, regardless of game mechanics. They play an important role of helping define a component that makes up a character, and whether it be strength and dexterity or wisdom, intelligence, persona, presence, projection, charisma, what have you. They serve purposes, and from these we get modifiers that apply to things like stats and attacks, and defenses, and interactions and negotiations, and so on and so forth. My own game system, the pending Stellar Frontiers, it has attributes too, and in my in and not getting off on trying not to get off on a big tangent on that. Because my game system is not really an RPG from the get-go, these attributes are base mechanics that are function as ways to get modifiers you need to help you interact with your NPCs in your game. And so if you want to negotiate with somebody, if you're going to negotiate with a merchant to have them build a factory built on one of your planets, your character, that's the character you choose to negotiate with that NPC, needs to have something to work with. So they have ranking, which is my version of experience. I have a closed-in ranking system. I mean, it doesn't just keep billowing out like experience points in a lot of like D&D and a lot of game systems. You get to a certain point of ability, and then you're that ability. You're either really good or you're not, and you don't keep getting better because that's not how things work. I'm sorry, but that's not how the real people function. We can reach a level of aptitude, and then there's a few people that can push a little higher, and then some few savant types that can go a little higher. There's still a ceiling. There's still a ceiling, and then there's the decline. So if you don't use stuff over time, things can go down. In this case, we're talking charisma. Uh, Confidence, self-confidence, confidence you project to other people, concept of beauty, what other people see you as, the aura that you project, the aura the charismatic aura that you have. What is charisma, and why is it important? How is it important? I note that a lot of players, especially gung ho fighter types, will charisma is one of the first ones to get butchered. It will take a lot of fighters with charisma of 8, and they get negatives and negotiating and negatives and other things because they're pouring all their points into strength and constitution and dexterity, which then means wisdom, and then intelligence, and then charisma being the bottom of the pile. And their argument is, I don't need to be wise, smart, or beautiful. I just need to be able to kill things and kill them well. And my argument is, you're right, absolutely. Although there are fighter classes of subclasses and then the bards primary thing is charisma because they're interacting with everybody. That's their main job, is to interact with other people. So they need to have a high level of charisma, even if it means having less strength or dexterity or constitution. And there's people that still argue that I want as much in my combat abilities as possible. Until they get into a game system where you're playing and you don't use your combat skills on a daily basis, then they get cheesed. They get upset. Well, I didn't know. No, you just had a perceived notion of what you wanted to play as a fighter or a barbarian or whatever, and we weren't listening to what I was saying when we were discussing what the concepts, the premise of the campaign was going to be. Anyway, so how do you view charisma? How do I view charisma? I see charisma, as this combination of different attributes and abilities. I'll acknowledge that in some of the game systems, and they're rare, but there are a few, and there's several older game systems where we have a lot more attributes than what we do in Dungeons and Dragons. And in that case, they did a better job of defining those things. So instead of having charisma, you have things like presence and appearance. Well, appearance is what it says. This is how you appear physically to other people and to yourself. So if you have a low appearance level, a low appearance score, you're going to be homely or scary or ugly, and it's going to hurt because really ugly people tend to have a lot harder time dealing with people on a personal level. I'm not saying that to be mean or cruel, but it's true. I'm by far not a beautiful person. Not close, right? It is what it is. On the other hand, presence. We have these in our stats where we have appearance and presence. Well, in D&D, they combined all that together under the heading charisma because it covers so much more than just the one or two things. In presence, this is how we project ourselves. Well, it's for ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and how we project that feeling outward so other people go, this person's charismatic. I like this person. I want to follow this person. It's not about the person. Look, and I kind of hate using this guy as an example, but Hitler was a very charismatic person. But he was pug ugly. He was short. He was ugly. He was not a handsome man. That little weird mustache of his worked on Charlie Chaplin. Did not work on him. I'm sorry. I don't know why the little Hitler mustache was a thing, but it didn't work for him. And as appearances went, he was not very inspiring. He was not, John Wayne by a mile. And yet, he could project a presence to other people that just drew people in and captivated them when he was speaking. He had that golden tongue, which, ironically enough, whenever I hear his speeches, they sound horrible. But that's because they're in German and I don't get it. Plus, I'm not of there. I know better, and I know what he ends up becoming. So I'm jaded to that aspect. But I still hear that today too. Not to pick politics aside, but I'll say the same thing. I listened to Trump run his mouth for a lot of those so-called campaign speeches, and I look at every campaign speech by every potential candidate the same way. It's just somebody trying to sell themselves to get your vote, and that's fine. We're going to sell you they're going to sell you a story, an idea of what they're going to help, how they're going to make your world better. In reality, they don't give a mouse fart about you specifically or your problems or how you view them other than vote for me. So Trump used his charisma, and he had a warped presence and a warped charisma, and yet he still won. And in part that's because his people that he was running against, their charisma wasn't so hot either. And in their case, people were fed up with the good old boy network, and even though and too many people looked at Hillary and saw, I don't know what they saw. I've always voted independent because I vote for the cause or the individual that I think is going to do the most good. And had I voted for either one of these people, I wasn't going to vote for either one of these people, straight up. That I don't know. Would Hillary make things better or worse? I don't know. Is Trump, doing things better or worse? You have to make a decision. We have to let history decide on that, because frankly, he scares the dickens out of me in some cases, and other times I got to root for the guy because he's not the establishment. He is bucking the system, even though he is the most openly megalomaniac president we've had in a long time. And you get what you pay for, folks, right? So that's what we talk about, charisma. You have enough confidence and stuff, you project it, and this is how, in game terms, we acquire followers. We get influence other people, the hearts and minds of those around us. We use charisma to negotiate and to some degree intimidation to manipulate the environment that our characters maneuver through. So, for the standard concepts of a fighter, the fighter does not need a high level of charisma unless he wants to be an officer, unless he has aspirations for a much grander thing. If you're looking to be the next warrior king, you need some charisma in there. You need to, give up maybe a little bit of that fighting prowess to have some political accruum, because you need to be able to project that presence and that aura of confidence to everybody around you, so they believe in you and your abilities and follow you. So, is it important? Sure, it's important, and even to the fighter to some degree. How do we define it? It's one of all the attributes. Charisma is the most convoluted because so many people see so many different things in it, and in some ways that's probably why it works the way it does. It is the one catch-all for everything. I mean, dexterity is self-explanatory. Come on, we all have to have, that's our reflexes and our ability to act and think quickly on our feet, to maneuver or to move with the moment, so to speak. And strength, strength is strength, right? Physical strength is what it is. I mean, you want mental strength. Well, now you're dealing with constitution. You're dealing with your ability to withstand and a lot of adversity and or physical whatever. That's where constitution comes in, which confuses somewhat from strength. Well, argumentatively, you can narrow it down and just have strength. You don't need constitution as strength. Strength could double for constitution in the same aspect, but you wouldn't get as many modifiers and bonuses. So Gary Gygax and some of the early guys says, hey, let's have 6 core attributes, and they originally had 8 or 10 or 12 on the table, and some of the revisions or back material you could acquire through Dragon and Dungeon magazines and stuff talked about some of these additional attributes that got left on the cutting room floor, so to speak, and then showed up in other game systems. So, intelligence, pretty straightforward. How smart is your guy? How much ability do they have to use the old melon? Wisdom, street smarts, or common sense. How much common sense does your guy got? You can't really define wisdom and intelligence as the same category, but you could. That's the reason why, like I said, if we define charisma as the under the attributes of presence and appearance, then you would not have the confusion that charisma so often gets. And that's one of the reasons that charisma is, a lot of players don't apply it to the degree that they could. It's just like a lot of magic spells and skill sets that are available for interacting with people on one degree or another, which most wizards are going into the adventure mode. They're not going to pack a lot of this clairvoyance and suggestion and things like this in their spell book, because what you're going to do is you're going to suggest to the dragon that he get out of the way so you can loot his hole. No. You're going to use your clairvoyance to get a good idea where we can get in and get to stuff without pissing off the dragon. Okay, maybe a little bit, but much better to have that extra fireball or lightning bolt in your hands to help you fight the damn thing if it comes after you, right? I'm just saying, right? Okay. So that's my take on charisma. If you don't agree, you agree. Blog, talk to your friends, discuss it on the channels. You know, get your own business out there. Till the next one.